Hello guys. It has been a while since we made a video on the channel, and today we are going to continue with our tutorial. The last time we ended on, I think, abstraction. Yeah. So today we are going to look at the last concept that is related to object oriented programming, which is going to be encapsulation. Okay. So encapsulation, as the name goes, is not really any big deal, but it looks like something very complex, right? But after this video, you should understand what encapsulation is, and you should also know how to write encapsulated code inside Java, right? So let's get started. So first of all, what does it mean by encapsulation? A programmer will define encapsulation in this particular ways. This is a way to restrict the direct access to some components of an object, so users cannot access state values for all of the variables of a particular object. So that is the definition of encapsulation when it comes to a programmer, like when it comes to a programmer defining it based on object oriented programming, right? You are restricting the access of some variables of a particular class to someone who is going to be using that particular variable. So let's see how that works with code. So what do we mean by encapsulation with real code? So let's start by creating some new classes to help us understand this better. So first of all, I'll create a class. I'll call it main, and this class will be our main class. And I'm going to be having the main method within this particular main class. And you know how we generate the main method, right? We just use the shortcut PSVM and then click on enter, and then everything is just generated for it. Then I'll do the same thing. This time I'm not going to be creating class within the same file, but I'll be creating different files for our different classes. So I create another class. I'll call this class student. Okay. So this class won't be having a main method because we are going to be calling it inside our main.java, right? So the student.java will be having some properties, like it will be having student name. So a student name is a string. So let's put the property string name, and then initially we'll not be assigning it any value. Then also we'll be having a property like the age of the student, int age. So it's just similar to a school system. Let me name these things better. We name with lower cases when we are dealing with variables. So it's a best practice to do it that way. So after naming this, I could probably print the name. I could just assign names to the students, create objects and assign names and give them age, right? So let me first start with creating an object out of this student class. So I could start creating an object by first of all creating a type called student. Then let's say this student will be student 1, so std1, and I use the new keyword student to show that I'm creating a new student. Then this student will be having certain properties. So if we want to access the properties, what do? We use the dot operator. So we just write the name of the particular object we created, then we bring a dot in front of it, and it shows all the properties that we have on that particular student object. And once we created that are on that particular student object is age and name, right? Age and name. So we can simply say student 1 dot age should be 10. Age is an integer, so if you check what we created here, we use an int type to create the age. So after doing this, we can actually print that out. So we can instead of, let's say, um doing it here, okay, let's see. Okay, we can print the age out by just saying std1 dot age again, then can print this out. So let's see what the output gives us. Let's see what we get for the output. And as you can tell, we should be getting like 10, right? We should be getting 10. Okay, so fine, we got 10, right? But from the definition of encapsulation, if you could remember, we are saying we want to restrict the user from getting too much access to the variables or the properties. But what we want to do really is to give them some methods that will help them to be able to access these variables easily rather than accessing the variables themselves. Okay, so let's let me explain that with a code so that you understand what I mean. So when you come to the student class, we are going to be creating something we call set age. We call them in Java setters and getters. That's what we are going to be applying here actually, and that is what encapsulation is all about: setters and getters. What setters do is that instead of you accessing your variable directly from another class like how we did here, we are going to use a method that will be able to set that value for us. So in other words, we won't be setting the value of the age directly on the object std1, but rather we'll use a particular method to do that. So to do that, we use a method called void. This method returns nothing, so it's a void method. So void set age, and it takes the particular age we want, and this should be an integer. So int, let's call it new age. So new age, then what do we do here? We just simply say age should be equal to what? New age, right? What this means is the age here will be set to what? The new age, that the one that we are going to be passing to this particular property, this particular method. So let's now call this method, instead of calling um, std1 dot age and setting it to 10, we are going to be calling the method on the particular object that we created. So std1 dot, instead of calling age, we call set age, and then we are going to pass it 10, right? Now we are going to print std1 dot age to show that we are still doing the same thing as before, right? Let's see what that gives us. So I'm printing that out. So you could see, let me just add a little text to make it look nice. My age is this. My age is 10, let's say 10 years. Okay, so let me rerun that so that you see how that looks. Okay, so it says my age is 10 years, right? So instead of using the age variable, we are now using a method called set age, which takes in an argument of the age we want to pass to the object, that particular student, and then we now print it out. But look at what we are doing here. We are still accessing the variable age here, right? We are still accessing the variable age here, and um, instead of using accessing this variable age here, we instead use what we call a getter. So it's rather gets the value of the age for us. So a getter will simply get the value of the age for us. So we can simply do get. So since we are getting this value, we probably are returning this value, right? So we are returning an integer. So this particular function will be having a type of int. So int get age, right, then we are not going to be passing any value to it. It is simply going to be returning our age, the age we created, right? This particular age, it will be returning that age for us, right? So let's now change this side and make it std dot get age, and let's see if our output remains the same. It should print my age is 10 years, the same thing, right? Maybe after this printing I should change the age to, let's say, 20 years, so that we can see that, okay, let me say 33 years. I'm not that old, but I'm just using it for an example age. 33 years dear are there. So let's see what that gives us. So my age is 33 years, which I am not 33 years, please. So it prints out 33 years. My age is 33 years. And that tells you that we are using a getter here. We are not passing any value. We are not using the property itself, but we are using a method that simply helps us to what? Get that value. And we are using a method here called set age that sets the value for us, right? It sets the value for it. So that is the use of setters and getters. Encapsulation is all about setters and getters. But you could still notice that we can still call the variable on the object that we created. You could still see these variables, name, age, which means we can still call age here. Let's say we assign it a value of v1, right? And that is not what we want. Okay, we don't want the user to be able to access the properties, but the user should be able to only interact with the methods, right, without accessing the properties. And there are a lot of reasons why we don't want that to happen. There are a lot of security reasons why you would not want that to happen. Okay, so let's take note. Or even some cases, let's say you don't want the user to enter some certain ages. Let's say we have negative ages, so we can use this set age method to prevent the user from entering negative ages, and then also prevent them from entering ages that are too large. Like, let's say the user will tell you I'm a teenager and then he's like 100 years old. That is really not possible, right? So these getters and setters help us to restrict the access of these variables, but we also don't want them to be able to access these variables. So how do we do that? We use something that we call private, like methods that abstract our values, right? We use methods that abstract our values. So we use this keyword private, and whenever you use this keyword private, it prevents anyone from accessing the particular um it prevents them from accessing the properties directly. Okay, it prevents them from accessing the properties directly. So as you can see, after using the private and now using the dot operator, you could see that the properties which are age and name have disappeared, leaving only what? Get age and set age. And therefore I can now use the methods get age and set age, so the user will not be able to access the properties anymore, but they have access to the methods, and the methods could put some restrictions on the kind of values that we are going to put in, or what we even return, right? We could this could be used in cases where, like, you are creating a website where user will be putting in a password, right? You don't want to put a password into your database because someone can easily access the password. So we use something we call the set the password. So we set the password with a particular value, which is not the same as the password the user entered. But anytime we would want to retrieve that value, we use that keyword, and that is sort of a getter and setter idea there, right? We hide the password itself, and show only like a sort of value that could be used to access the password. Okay, so that is one importance of encapsulation. It restricts the access, right? It restricts you from accessing the properties themselves, but gives you access to what we call getters and setters, which are just simply methods, right? The methods that are given to the user to use, right? So now let's do the same thing for our name, right? So we can do void set name, and in this case we are passing a string, so we are going to pass a string type and then new name. And how do we do this? We use name equals new name. Okay, now we can do the same for the get name method as well. So the get name returns a string, so string, the type should be string since it will be returning a string. Get name, and it takes no arguments, so it just returns the name. Okay, so after we are done setting the name, it's simply going to be returning that name for us. So let's do that here. Now let's try to um, get the name. So let's set the name first. So we set name. So you could see that the methods have appeared here without the properties, right? So we are setting the name. Let's say the name is Ameyao. Ameyao. Okay, so let me say that is the name. Okay, now I'm going to print out the name. So s out my name is std1 dot get name. So now I'm getting the name. So my name is Ameyao. You know what this will print out, right? So now let's run this and see how this works. So it's running. Let's see what the output would be. So the first case, we are using a set age and get age method. Set age to set the value first, and then we get the value we've set. Then the second one is set name and get name. So we set the name first, and then we now what, get the name, right? So that is what we are doing, and that is all about encapsulation, right? Encapsulation is all about hiding the properties themselves and then giving you some methods that will be used to access those properties. And then those methods, we can write some implementations or algorithms that will help us to restrict the level of access of those kind of properties that we have in our objects or in our classes. So that is all about encapsulation. And thank you for watching this video. Do well to subscribe to the channel, and we'll be bringing in more content. I think the next time we are going to be making this tutorial, we'll be talking about data structures a bit, right? The name is some way unfamiliar. If you've done C programming, you may not be familiar with the word data structures if they've not taught you that. But data structures is simply the arrays and the arrays we know, right? The arrays, the sets. So we will get to looking at those things in our next tutorial possibly. So do well to subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you in another tutorial. Thank you.